Welcome back to our YouTube channel, the place where soothing stories are told to guide you into deep and peaceful slumber. Every night, we come together to relax, unwind, and immerse ourselves in a world of captivating tales, from history and mysteries to wondrous journeys. Sleep is not just a time for the body to rest. It's also a moment for the soul to be soothed by stories told in a gentle and warm manner. In today's episode, we will take you back in time to explore a fascinating and mysterious story. The mysterious death of the world's greatest musical genius, Mozart. From his genius melodies to the unresolved shadows of his life, the story of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's life and passing will surely leave you in awe. So, settle into your cozy bed, close your eyes, and join us on this journey. Wishing you a truly relaxing evening and enjoy tonight's story. When you think of Austria, what comes to mind? If you're a history or geography enthusiast, you might recognize it as a Central European nation and one of the countries involved in sparking World War I. However, in this story, we won't delve into the geopolitical issues of that nation, but instead explore the life and mysterious death of one of Austria's greatest figures. Welcome to this journey of discovery. Today, we will travel back in time to witness the rise of a musical genius and uncover the hidden corners of his enigmatic passing, a figure of global stature. That man is Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Born on January 27, 1756, to a family with his father, Leopold Mozart, and mother, Anna Maria. The family resided in Salzburg, Austria's fourth largest city after Vienna, Graz, and Linz. This city was once the capital of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese, a church-state within the Holy Roman Empire, which later became a Republic of Austria. Mozart was the youngest of 7 children in his family. Tragically, fate took 5 of them for various reasons, leaving Mozart with only one surviving sibling, his sister Maria Anna Mozart. Today, we know Mozart as a musical genius and a towering figure in world history. However, his path to becoming a great musician was far from smooth. As if destined by fate, Mozart's connection to music began at a very young age. His father, Leopold, was a minor composer and an experienced music teacher. When Mozart's sister, Anna, was 7, their father began teaching her to play the keyboard. Meanwhile, 3-year-old Mozart would sit and watch his sister practice. Years later, after Mozart's passing, his sister recalled, "My little brother would spend hours at the keyboard, picking out intervals that struck him deeply, and his joy was evident when they sounded beautiful." This marked the official beginning of Mozart's lifelong bond with music. After countless days spent at the keyboard, when Mozart was 4, Leopold set a clear goal for his son. He began teaching Mozart simple pieces on the keyboard. With remarkable softness and precision in his fingers, the young boy played flawlessly. By age 5, Mozart composed his first pieces alongside his father, with Leopold transcribing his son's early works. Even today, some scholars debate whether Mozart could truly have composed at such a young age, as 5 is considered too young to create complete musical works. Nonetheless, those early compositions, marked with ink smudges on paper, demonstrated to the world the extraordinary genius of this prodigy. Recognizing his son's talent, Leopold ultimately abandoned his own composing career to focus on nurturing Mozart's burgeoning gift. In those early years, Leopold was Mozart's sole teacher. Beyond music, He taught his children foreign languages and other academic subjects to ensure the comprehensive development of both Mozart and his sister. Throughout his childhood, Mozart and his family traveled across Europe, where he and his sister performed publicly as musical prodigies. Their first tour, lasting 3.5 years, began with a performance in 1762 at the palace of Elector Maximilian III in Munich, followed by shows at the royal palaces in Vienna and Prague. During this tour, Mozart met other musicians and familiarized himself with their works. At age 8, he composed his first symphony, likely transcribed by his father. The family returned to Vienna in late 1767 and stayed until December 1768. After a year back in Salzburg, Leopold and Mozart embarked on a lengthy tour of Italy from December 1769 to March 1771. As with previous journeys, Leopold aimed to showcase his son's abilities as a professional performer. In 1770, in Milan, Mozart wrote the opera Mithridate, Ridi Ponto, which was performed with great success. This triumph led to the creation of numerous other operas. Mozart and his father returned to Milan twice more, producing and premiering 2 operas, Ascanio and Alba in 1771 and Lucio Silla in 1772. In 1772, Leopold hoped this visit would secure a professional position for his son in Italy, but those hopes were never realized. Toward the end of the Italian tour, Mozart composed his first solo vocal works, Exsultate Jubilati, which remain widely performed today. Mozart returned to Salzburg in 1773, then traveled with his mother to Paris. In the French capital, Mozart wrote music textbooks, connected with publishers, and composed anything he could sell or perform. However, life of the mother and son deteriorated due to Paris's high cost of living, and Mozart suffered the devastating loss of his mother. Saddened and reluctant, Mozart returned to Salzburg with his father, burdened with debt but hopeful for a brighter future. In 1782, after some time back home, Mozart married Constanze, the sister of his former love, Aloysia. Despite strong opposition from his father, the musical genius went ahead with the wedding. This created a rift between Mozart and his father that was never reconciled. After settling down, both Mozart and Constanze faced financial instability, quickly falling into hardship. In this context, Mozart continued writing music and teaching to earn money. Sometime later, he achieved significant success with the opera La Noce di Figaro. He then collaborated with the librettist Lorenzo da Ponte, completing Don Giovanni in 1787. Most of Mozart's works from this period were widely praised, but some noted that his music was becoming harder to grasp. The light, accessible style of his earlier works was fading, and musicians and audiences complained that his compositions were increasingly difficult to appreciate. The final 15 years of Mozart's life were marked by prolonged suffering due to financial struggles, driving him to compose prolifically. In total, he created over 200 works across various genres. The genius composer left humanity a legacy of masterpieces that continue to resonate in concert halls today. Among Mozart's countless works, one stands out particularly enigmatic, sparking debates and discussions long after his time. Mozart himself sensed an inevitable death when he accepted the commission for this piece, a work steeped in darkness, a rarity in his repertoire. It seemed to foreshadow the mysterious demise of the Austrian musical genius soon after. This is understandable, as the work's very name carries an air of gloom, and it was a final piece Mozart composed. It is called Requiem, or as it is more widely known, the Mass for the Dead. This piece is shrouded in mysteries, starting with the enigmatic figure who commissioned it. In early July 1791, a mysterious stranger dressed in gray appeared at Mozart's doorstep, claiming to represent an anonymous patron. He delivered a letter requesting that Mozart compose a Requiem Mass, with the condition that Mozart not attempt to uncover the patron's identity. Initially, Mozart was uninterested in the genre and tried to discourage the request by quoting an unusually high fee, hoping the stranger would back off. He asked for 60 ducats and noted that the work would take 2 to 3 months to complete. For those unfamiliar, the ducat was an ancient European currency used during Mozart's time. The very next day, the stranger returned with 30 ducats in hand, gave them to Mozart, and promised to return in 3 months to collect the piece and pay the remaining 30 ducats. Left with no choice, Mozart agreed to write the Mass for the Dead. At the time of this commission, Mozart's health was frail, as he was reportedly suffering from multiple ailments. Illness had weakened his body significantly, yet he pressed on to fulfill the commission, having accepted the advance payment. As his health deteriorated, Mozart became convinced that he was cursed for taking on this project, and his intuition told him his time was running out. According to his wife, during the composition of the piece, Mozart frequently muttered, "I fear I am writing this requiem for myself." Indeed, events unfolded as Mozart had foreseen. After battling illness, he passed away in the early hours of December 5, 1791. According to friends and family, on his deathbed, Mozart repeatedly said, "Didn't I say I was writing this requiem for myself?" Mozart's funeral was simple due to his family's limited financial resources. Curiously, neither his wife nor close relatives provided him with a proper grave, and even his coffin was made of cheap wood. As a result, no one today knows the exact location of the Austrian musician's grave. Historical records suggest Mozart was buried in a communal grave, making it nearly impossible to locate his remains among the countless bones at St. Mark's Cemetery, where he rests eternally. Returning to the story of the Mass for the Dead, Mozart passed away before completing the work. Since he had accepted an advance payment, his wife feared that failing to deliver the piece on time would lead to demand for repayment or even compensation from the family. For this reason, she sought help from 2 of Mozart's former students. After much discussion and careful consideration, Joseph Eibler was chosen to complete the Mass for the Dead, as his compositional style closely resembled that of his teacher. Immediately, Mozart's wife provided Eibler with the drafts and unfinished notes left by the genius composer. Using these, Eibler masterfully completed the final work of his mentor. After finishing the Mass for the Dead, Eibler transcribed the entire piece in his own handwriting to create a unified and complete manuscript, then forged Mozart's signature and delivered it to mysterious patron. Thus, the completion of the Mass for the Dead was resolved. However, the identity of the person who paid 60 ducats remained a mystery. Who was it that commissioned Mozart to write this somber piece? Could it have been Antonio Salieri, Mozart's alleged arch-rival? The person who paid 60 ducats to commission the Austrian musical genius was actually Count Franz von Walsegg-Stuppach. The Count wanted a Requiem Mass to commemorate his young wife's passing. However, at the time, he had a notorious reputation for stealing others' works and claiming them as his own. Naturally, the Requiem he paid 60 ducats for would not bear Mozart's name. Upon learning the identity of the commissioner, Mozart's wife approached Count Franz, demanding that authorship be returned to her late husband. It took a decade for her to convince von Walsegg to acknowledge Mozart as the true composer of the Mass for the Dead. While authorship was rightfully restored, another issue arose. Since Eibler had transcribed the entire piece in his own handwriting, it remains unclear how much of the final work was actually Mozart's. Some scholars even suggest that Eibler enlisted other composers to help complete the piece, as he lacked the talent and imagination to create such a masterpiece alone. Nevertheless, the Mass for the Dead is widely regarded by music experts as a masterpiece of humanity. As the renowned composer Beethoven once said, "If Mozart didn't write the Mass for the Dead, then the person who did was Mozart." To date, 233 years after the passing of the Austrian musical genius, his works continue to echo in theaters and concert halls worldwide. Yet, as brilliant as his life and career were, his death remains shrouded in mystery. Over 2 centuries later, despite the tireless efforts of scientists and historians, the exact cause of Mozart's death remains unknown. The Austrian musician's passing is so enigmatic that researchers have dubbed it the most complex death in the world due to the numerous conspiracy theories surrounding it. Mozart's death certificate vaguely states that he died of a high fever. About 15 days before his passing, he exhibited symptoms such as high fever, rashes, swelling body aches, and psychological disturbances. For years, researchers have sought answers to this most complex death. However, Mozart's death remains a mystery, with numerous rumors and theories attempting to explain the genius's enigmatic passing. The first theory suggests he was poisoned, possibly by Salieri. A bit about this man. Antonio Salieri was also a musical genius with significant influence on 19th century music history. He held prominent positions, such as president of the National Musicians Association and chief conductor of the Austrian Royal Orchestra. He was also a teacher to later famous composers like Ludwig van Beethoven and Franz Schubert. It's believed that the rivalry between Mozart and Salieri was the root of the Austrian musician's unusual death. The conflict began when Mozart applied to be the music teacher for Princess Swedenbach. However, Salieri allegedly used underhanded tactics to secure the position. In response, Mozart wrote the opera Così fan tutte, condemning Salieri's shady schemes. Rumors suggest this was a catalyst for Mozart's tragedy. Suspicions that Salieri orchestrated Mozart's death grew when Salieri's confessor reportedly heard of a plot to poison Mozart, with the confession allegedly recorded in church documents. Shortly after Mozart's death, Salieri showed signs of mental breakdown and was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Efforts by his relatives to quell rumors linking Salieri to Mozart's death were unsuccessful. Worse, the rumor that Salieri poisoned Mozart spread worldwide, even inspiring the great poet Pushkin to write the play Mozart and Salieri in the early 1830s. The second theory posits that Mozart's death was due to using mercury to treat an illness. He reportedly suffered from a high fever for 5 consecutive days before his death. Doctors used ice to lower his body temperature, but he soon fell into a deep coma with no signs of recovery. A day later, he died in delirium. Rumors suggest he had contracted a sexually transmitted disease and used mercury as a remedy. To clarify, mercury, as modern science has shown, is a toxic metal to the human body. If the rumors are true, mercury could have gradually destroyed Mozart's body, leading to his slow demise. Of course, these are mere speculations, and historians cannot currently verify their accuracy. The third theory relates Mozart's death to his complicated love life. Two stories circulated among Western scholars about Mozart's romantic tragedies. The first claims he was betrayed by his wife. Mozart and Constanze had 6 children, for whom tragically died young for various reasons. Their youngest child, born on July 26, 1791, 6 months before Mozart's death, was named Franz Xaver, coincidentally sharing the name of one of Mozart's students. Some Western scholars now believe this youngest child was not Mozart's, but rather the son of his student, Joseph Eibler. It's rumored that Eibler seduced Mozart's wife and poisoned the musical genius, leading to his tragic death. Another theory suggests Mozart's death resulted from being beaten by the husband of one of his students. During his illustrious career, aside from composing, Mozart taught music to many aristocrats. Among them was a woman named Maria Magdalena, whose husband treated Mozart generously. However, according to Western scholars, instead of maintaining his role as a teacher, Mozart seduced his student. When the affair came to light, the enraged husband broke into Mozart's home and brutally beat the composer. Already weakened by multiple illnesses, Mozart could not withstand the assault, resulting in his tragic death at age 35. Another theory widely circulated is that Mozart was assassinated by the Freemasons. A brief note about the secretive organization. The Freemasons are a fraternal organization originating in the Middle Ages, emerging in England in the late 16th century, and later spreading to other countries. The Freemasons are considered one of the most mysterious and powerful secret societies, with millions of members, including prominent leaders, scientists, writers, and artists. The organization promotes esoteric education, pioneering the use of symbols and rituals related to stonemasonry. The Freemasons encourage members to act for humanity's progress, but allow each member to choose how to do so. Charitable activities are a common practice for this enigmatic group. According to records from Mozart's contemporaries, the musical genius, whether by chance or intent, composed the opera The Magic Flute to depict the conflict between the Freemasons and Christianity. Some historians point out that Mozart described a secret Masonic ritual in his opera, angering the order's members. The fate of those who dare reveal the Freemasons' sacred rituals to the outside world was a mysterious death, one that remains unsolved to this day. Despite numerous analyses of Mozart's unusual passing, after over 2 centuries, the death of the Austrian musical genius remains a topic of fascination and study for scholars. A report from the Center for Health, Nutrition, and Sunlight Research in San Francisco suggests that if Mozart had spent a few minutes in the sunlight each day, he might not have died so young. In short, Mozart's death may have been due to a lack of sunlight exposure, leading to the final theory: death from vitamin D deficiency. This theory leans toward a scientific explanation. According to William Grant from the Center for Health, Nutrition, and Sunlight Research in San Francisco, and Stephen Pills from the Medical University of Graz, Austria, Mozart's limited exposure to sunlight, combined with his nocturnal work habits, caused a severe vitamin D deficiency. The researchers noted that Vienna, at 48 degrees north latitude where Mozart lived, experiences weak sunlight for 6 months of the year, insufficient for the body to synthesize vitamin D. The other 6 months provide enough sunlight for vitamin D production, but Mozart's habits of avoiding sunlight and composing primarily at night exacerbated the deficiency. This low vitamin D level likely contributed to his death, as it weakened his immune system, making him susceptible to infections like fever, sore throat, and colds, which he suffered from between 1762 and 1783, particularly from mid-October to mid-May when sunlight was scarce. Mozart's death is perhaps one of the most debated, especially since his remains have never been conclusively identified. Historical records indicate he was buried in a communal grave at St. Mark's Cemetery on the outskirts of Vienna on December 6, 1791, in a cheap wooden coffin, alongside 15 to 20 others. 7 years later, as part of a government initiative to relocate graves for new burials, the remains were exhumed. Due to the communal nature of the grave, workers could not identify Mozart's remains, and the genius's bones were scattered, their whereabouts unknown. In 1902, the Mozarteum Museum received a skull believed to be Mozart's, reportedly donated by Joseph Hyrtl, a renowned anatomist. Hyrtl claimed it was found by a grave digger named Russell during the exhumation and later given to him. Jacob Hyrtl, a wood-carving artisan and Joseph's brother, was also mentioned. However, another theory suggests the skull was stolen from Mozart's coffin in 1801 by a gravedigger named Joseph Rothmayer, though it's unclear how it reached the Mozarteum. Rumors claim that Vienna holds 12 to 13 skulls reported to be Mozart's, but only 3 are considered credible, including the one displayed at the Mozarteum. However, this skull is incomplete, missing its lower jaw. In preparation for Mozart's 250th birthday celebration in 2004, Austria's IMF Forensic Institute in Innsbruck and a U.S. military DNA laboratory in Rockville, Maryland, conducted independent tests on the Mozarteum skull to resolve lingering doubts about its authenticity. In October 2004, researchers in Salzburg exhumed the graves of Mozart's relatives, including his father, grandmother, niece, and 5 other family members buried in communal family plot at St. Sebastian's Cemetery, to collect DNA samples for comparison. This work was led by forensic Dr. Christian Reiter. In the U.S., Dr. Walter Parson, a world-renowned forensic expert, and his team analyzed DNA from 2 teeth and hair from the skull, comparing it to DNA from the thigh bones of Mozart's grandmother and niece sent from Salzburg. These studies, funded by Austria's national ORF television network, were documented in a film titled Mozart, The Search for Evidence. On January 8, 2006, ORF aired the documentary, revealing the results. Disappointingly, the Innsbruck forensic team identified most of the DNA samples from the analyzed skulls, finding that many belonged to European victims of the December 2004 Southeast Asian tsunami. Sadly, the DNA from the skull did not match any of Mozart's relatives' DNA. Dr. Parson in the U.S. reached a similar conclusion. Thus, the whereabouts of the Austrian musical geniuses remain a mystery, an unresolved question to this day. Reflecting on Mozart's career, he is undoubtedly one of the greatest composers of all time. His music profoundly influenced European classical music, leaving a vast legacy that significantly shaped the history of world music. His works are considered pinnacles in genres like piano, chamber music, symphonies, religious music, and opera. Though some criticize and belittle his style during his lifetime, Mozart was admired by later composers, and his works became integral to many concerts. Tragically, a figure as great as Mozart met a profoundly somber end, one that remains a mystery today. Despite passing at a young age, centuries later, humanity continues to speak of Mozart. Thank you for joining us in this captivating tale of the mysterious death of the world's greatest musical genius, Mozart, tonight. We hope Mozart's life melodies and the mysteries surrounding him have guided you on a gentle journey, easing your mind for a restful sleep. Don't forget to relax, take deep breaths, and let your worries fade away. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to stay updated on our upcoming stories. Wishing you a peaceful sleep, sweet dreams, and see you in the next episode. Good night.